"Put the gun down now," he barked, voice metallic and sharp in the half-lit room. "Give it to me," the diamond handed over. "You're making a mistake," came the reply, something brittle under the calm. "It's not yours, it never was." A chair scraped, boots shifted on old boards, breathing jagged through the quiet. "I said give me the watch." For a heartbeat no one moved. "Don't do this," the younger voice pleaded, but resolve and fear braided together, rough as rust. "It's your word against a Kensington. Let's see who they'll believe." A hand hovered above the battered silver pocket watch, suspended in a shaft of lamplight. "The truth doesn't bend for you," the first voice spat, louder now, ragged. Another step, tense, every muscle straining toward release that hadn't yet come. All eyes locked on the small, broken pocket watch at the very edge of the green felt pad. And for the briefest instant, everything stilled, fate perched on the verge. But to understand how a quiet watchmaker and a gun turned up in a shuttered Boston shop at midnight, you have to go back, before the rain, the eviction, before anyone believed what a broken watch could hold. It began with water hammering the window of a near-bankrupt watch repair shop on West Chandler Street, the kind of cold rain that seeps into bone. Across the slick sidewalk, Jacob Merrick watched bulldog-faced men heave Elias Wren's boxes onto the curb, fingers numb around the empty mug he couldn't afford to refill. The neighborhood used to be crumbling brick and sagging stoops. Lately, it felt like he was the only thing left crumbling. Sudden voices exploded outside. He shoved aside the ticket stub stack and pressed to the glass. A trio of corporate tissue movers towered over a white-haired man in pajamas, Elias, the last rent-controlled holdout in the block, arguing over a battered medicine box and a bundle of family photographs, water blurring the faces. "Move it or lose it, old man," barked the burly one. His name tag read Briggs. Next came the scraping thud as a battered silver pocket watch, its thick case and snapped chain, skittered into the gutter. Elias clutched at his chest, one hand closing over nothing. Jacob bolted out the door, his shoes slapping water. "Hey, that's his." But the words vanished as time bent. Elias blinked up, mouth working. He sagged, knees buckling against the curb. Jacob slid in beside him, ignoring Briggs's curses, shielding the old man from falling boxes. "Can somebody call for help?" Jacob yelled, hands shaking, pocketing the cold, heavy watch without thinking. Briggs laughed. "Let him have the junk. Kensington's orders, nothing left but the air." Somewhere in the confusion, Elias' lips moved inches from Jacob's ear, whispering one phrase, "Don't let them have it, not them." And then paramedics carried the old man away, leaving a mess of garbage bags, 2 ruined chairs, a medicine box, empty now, and the watch. People passing by barely spared a glance, but Jacob tried to gather what he could. Rain poured off the brim of his hat, soaking him to the threads. His account was already overdue on 3 bills. The shop's lease teetered on the edge thanks to Kensington Realty, and now this. He slipped the battered pocket watch into his pocket, feeling the weight settle. Briggs and the men rolled the last dumpster shut and disappeared into the Kensington Corp van. That night Jacob sat in the shop, lights low, studying the broken watch beneath the lens. He could see why no one else bothered. Thick case, splayed cover, second hand, stuck at midnight. The initials EW on the back, nearly worn smooth. But then, as the pale pool of lamplight flickered, something inside the battered casing caught his eye, 3 faint scratches beneath the hinge, almost like numbers 54. There was a tiny seam inside the case. Not a repair, not damage, something built to be hidden. That decided it. He left the closed sign up and set tools in order, knife, tweezers, dental pick. Rain battered the roof, unrelenting. If you've ever watched justice spiral just out of reach, only to find a clue in the dirtiest corner, follow this story. Sometimes the broken things left in your care are more dangerous and hopeful than anyone wants to believe. He barely slept. By dawn, the city seemed to hum with something hidden. The next day brought no relief. Jacob's landlord, a pinched man with a patchy beard, banged on the glass. "You got 2 days, Merrick. Even the clocks are running out here." Jacob forced a smile. "They're hardier than we look." But inside, something in him was cracking. He stared at the battered watch as if it might answer for him. The seam was clearer now, illuminated by the early light. He pulled out the case knife, hands steadier than he thought they'd be. The knife slipped beneath the edge, not too much pressure, just enough. The faceplate hissed open with a soft metallic sigh, and inside, a wadded scrap of oilcloth, its weave dark with age. Jacob pried it loose, heart tripping. He unwrapped the cloth. Something dense fell into his palm, a rough, glassy stone, pink as bruised dawn, jagged at the corners and far too large for an ordinary jewel. He stared. The stone was the size of a walnut. Pink fire flickered through its cloudy heart even in diffuse light. A diamond, not a cut stone, but real, raw, unpolished, and extraordinary. He swore out loud, a rasp of disbelief. The rain didn't let up as Jacob looked for answers. He flipped on the shop laptop, did something he'd only done once before, bypassed the firewall for stolen goods sites, desperate for comparison. Keywords: large pink rough, missing diamond, Amsterdam stone, 1954. He sucked in a breath as a grainy black and white photo loaded. A jewel, uncanny in size and color, described as the Rose of Amsterdam, vanished during a notorious art heist in '54, never recovered. His fingers trembled above the keyboard. Downstairs, someone rattled the shop door, but he didn't move. If this belonged to Elias, who was supposed to have died penniless, why hide a stone worth, what, tens of millions? Piecing it together, Jacob limped upstairs. He caught himself on the rail, old injury spiking, a memory from years ago when an act of kindness for a stranger got him a shattered knee. The flaw that made him easy to overlook and sometimes easy to trust. Elias' family would come looking, or those Kensington men sure would. He had to know what came next. Jacob wrapped the watch and diamond again, this time in a heavy leather pouch, and slipped it into the back office safe. Then he called the only person he still trusted, his younger sister Molly, the one everyone called a trouble magnet but who never missed a trick. "You got a diamond in a watch," she hissed over the phone. "Jace, you know what this is, right? Don't let anybody in, I'm coming over." Her voice trembled but matched his own fear. He locked the doors and waited, turning over old receipts, running a diamond tester one more time. The little machine chirped in the affirmative. Diamond, not glass, no doubt. That night Molly arrived, wind-blown, pink-haired, smelling like rain and stale peppermint gum. "You're shaking," she said, brushing his hand aside and peering at the watch. "Show me." He did. Molly whistled low. "Jace, this is big. We can't just turn this in, not to the cops here. You know who runs half this neighborhood." He nodded. "Kensington, I figured." She pointed to the initials inside the case. "And this number 54, that's not a year." "The heist," he said quietly. "I think Elias was part of it, or someone in his past." Molly looked at him, eyes wide. "They'll kill for this." He wrapped up the watch. "Let's keep quiet. We wait for Elias to wake up in the hospital, then we find out just how much trouble we're in." He didn't sleep. Through the thin walls he could hear Molly tapping keys, researching everything she could. At some point she looked up. "There are rumors, Jace. Kensington's grandfather was implicated in that old heist but walked free. His rival died broke. If Elias has the diamond and Kensington finds out." Jacob interrupted, voice stiff with exhaustion. "We need leverage, not a price. Besides, you trust the feds." She hesitated, then said, "More than the local cops, but only just." That was the first hook deepened, the rest would follow. By the time the sun rose over broken brickwork, the city felt different. Jacob's flaw, the hesitation that made him miss subtle cues, now served as his best tool. He noticed what others dismissed, dug where people overlooked, moved quietly in shadows. Molly met his tired gaze. "You know this could scorch us both, right?" "Maybe some things are worth burning for," he replied. The next day, Jacob packed the watch in an unmarked envelope, hid the diamond deeper in the safe, and erased his browsing history. The phone vibrated, unknown number. Mr. Merrick crooned a voice slick and venomous, too calm for the hour. I hear you have something of my family's. How about you bring it back before anyone gets hurt? Jacob's heart pounded. He kept his tone flat. Wrong number. He recognized Kensington's voice anyway, youth disguised with brittle confidence, entitlement under lacquered politeness. You're already marked, son, Kensington replied, voice dropping to a crackle. You know what's at stake. The line went dead. Jacob slammed the door and checked the locks again. Molly watched, face paler than before. They know, she whispered. He nodded. We move now. They took off in Molly's battered sedan, weaving through flooded streets to Boston General. The old man, Elias, was under strict watch, 2 police officers at the door, news of the eviction reaching no one but a sympathetic nurse. Jacob leaned on the cane as they waited, his limp pronounced. To pass the time, Molly fidgeted. You ever think maybe all this is because you don't say no to anyone? She muttered, only half joking. Jacob closed his eyes and tried to push down the guilt. Today, I'm saying no to someone. The nurse finally let them in. Elias looked even smaller now, bones sharp under a hospital blanket, oxygen hissing quietly. He smiled when he saw Jacob, or tried to, face creasing like old parchment. You kept it safe, boy, he wheezed. Still here, Jacob said softly, voice cracking. Elias' eyes flickered. Don't trust Kensington. His grandfather, Carver, was the real thief. My brother died trying to stop him. The stone was all I had left to prove the truth, didn't mean to hide it forever. He broke off, chest straining. Jacob squeezed his shoulder. Molly leaned in. Who else knows? Elias' lips trembled. No one left who'll speak, but proof all in the watch. Take it to the feds, not the city. They'll find you otherwise. Molly pressed dates, names. In the back etched 54 VDV, Van der Veen, that's all, rest is on you now, he rasped. It was as much as he could manage. Jacob and Molly left the hospital, shaken. Outside, Jacob felt the weight of the pocket watch press harder than ever. They drove back in silence, rain lashed and tense. At a red light, Jacob asked quietly, if it comes down to it, run. Molly's laughter was tired. I'd rather fight, but if you want to run, now's the time. He shook his head, not yet. Back at the shop, the door was ajar, a single muddy bootprint across the threshold. They froze. Jacob gestured for silence, picking up the hammer from the counter. Creaking inside, someone had already ransacked the office, the safe pried at but intact. Kensington, Molly mouthed. Jacob checked, diamond still secure, pocket watch in hand. They retreated to the alley, dialing the FBI's art crime tip line. Molly did the talking, her voice low, precise. We have proof of the Rose of Amsterdam theft, hidden in a Waltham 1899 pocket watch. The suspect is Bradley Kensington, grandson of Carver Kensington. The agent on the other end promised to call back. Jacob stuffed the watch and stone into an iron box and slipped it into a floorboard safe Molly had discovered last year, meant for hiding from landlords. Now, it felt like the city's only honest place. Above, a siren split the air, sharp and insistent. Brakes screeched. Jacob glanced around. Across the street, a dark Mercedes idled, taillights glowing. Briggs in the driver's seat, face angry behind the glass. They ducked away, cutting through alleyways. Jacob's leg throbbed, but he didn't stop. He didn't think about the risks. He only thought of Elias, of Molly, and of everything that could go wrong. Later, in Molly's apartment, safe behind 4 locks and a deadbolt, Jacob outlined his plan. We bait them, he said, voice tight. We offer a meeting with proof we have the diamond. We record everything. If Kensington tries to take it, we've got him. If he tries to cut a deal, same. Molly raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to poke this bear? This bear already knows my scent. For once she smiled. All right, we'll need leverage, a backup plan. They gathered all the evidence. The etchings, copies of the family ledger found in the watch, news clippings Molly had sourced, hospital records showing Elias' sudden eviction. They drafted an email, anonymous, proof of the Rose of Amsterdam, meet at Fletcher and Sons tomorrow midnight, no police, bring only one man. They copied the feds separately. Possible target, Kensington Corp will deliver physical proof at designated time, Fletcher and Sons, midnight tomorrow. Jacob practiced what he would say. Molly did test runs of the audio recorders. At sunset, they prepared the shop, hiding cameras and bugs behind shelves, taping a microphone under the felt pad. Molly watched, amused. "Hey Jace, if we make it through, first round's on you." He managed a weak smile. "Deal." The next night, as the world outside blurred in rain, Jacob waited, heart pounding. Every shadow felt dangerous. But at midnight, Briggs entered first, face flushed with anticipation. Kensington followed, slick suit, a smile veined with threats. He looked around the shop as if bored by the dust. "Mr. Merrick, that's a family trinket you've got," he said, idly tapping a brass clock on the desk. Jacob laid the battered pocket watch in the center of the green felt pad. "It's not yours, never was." Kensington raised an eyebrow. "You going to give it back, or do I have to be unpleasant?" Briggs's hands twitched, jacket bulging just enough to show the handle of a firearm. Jacob kept his own hands visible. "You know what's inside." A pause. Kensington's gaze narrowed. "You have something valuable. Name your price." "Truth," Jacob snapped. "You paid men to evict Elias, hoping he'd die and the diamond would be gone forever. Your family empire's built on theft." Kensington's laugh was icy. "You think the feds will believe that? A bankrupt watchmaker and a crazy old man." Jacob slid the watch toward him, careful. "Let's find out." That was when Briggs drew the gun, leveling it at Jacob's chest. Molly's voice sliced through the tension from behind a cabinet. "Back up, this is all being recorded. Hidden cameras, audio too, there's no way out." Briggs's hand trembled. For a flash, in the sickly lamplight, everything seemed to tip. The gun, the watch, fate suspended on who would blink first. Then Jacob spoke, the words resounding like a hammer on steel. "Put the gun down now." Briggs hesitated. Kensington snarled, "You're making a mistake. The diamond, hand it over." Jacob's voice, brittle and brave, barely wavered. "It's not yours, it never was." Briggs shifted, boots scraping floorboards. "I said, give me the watch." For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Molly's voice cut in, sharp as panic. "Don't do this. We have everything, emails, video, hospital records. This goes to the feds tomorrow." Kensington's eyes went wild, desperation cracking his sleek facade. "Your word against a Kensington, let's see who they'll believe." Jacob's hand hovered above the watch, green felt glowing dully under the lamp. "The truth doesn't bend for you." The silence was electric. Then headlights pooled outside the shop windows, 3 black SUVs, agents tumbling out. Doors burst open, wind-driven and staccato. A voice thundered, "FBI, drop your weapon." Briggs, wide-eyed, flinched, gun falling from his grip. Kensington tried to back away, but Molly blocked the door, recorder raised. The lead agent swept in, badge held high. "Bradley Kensington, you're under arrest for art theft, conspiracy, and assault. Victor Briggs, you're coming too." For a few breaths, no one spoke. Only the sound of guns clattering to the old shop floor and the rhythmic pulse of blood in Jacob's ears. Kensington glared at Jacob, poison in his whisper. "You'll regret this. This city always swallows rats." But for once, Jacob felt taller, steadier, the flaw of hesitation burned off by finally acting. Briggs and Kensington were read their rights, faces drained of all arrogance. Flashbulbs flickered through the windows. Clara Mitchell, the persistent journalist, was already reporting, her sharp eyes catching every detail. Jacob stepped back, hands still tingling. Molly grinned, relief shining through. The feds carefully retrieved the diamond, cataloging every piece of evidence. the battered pocket watch sealed in a plastic bag alongside the Rose of Amsterdam, the etching gleaming under inspection lights. The article went live an hour later, Clara's headline crisp: "Stolen gem found in Boston watch shop. Local heirs face federal charges." Over the next days, community members stopped Jacob on the street, or what was left of the old street, to say thank you, to shake his hand, to offer to help keep the shop open just a little longer. Kensington and Briggs sat in custody, denied bail, the feds citing flight risk and the scope of organized theft. Kensington Realty's stock cratered overnight, lawsuits poured in. Neighbors who had long feared the Kensington name now found their courage. Elias, frail but alive, looked up from his hospital bed the next morning to see Jacob on the news, holding the battered pocket watch. Tears traced down the old man's face, washed away by relief. The day after the FBI returned to tell Jacob and Molly that a deal had been struck. The diamond would finally go to the museum where it belonged, the evidence aired in open court, and the two of them would testify, not as suspects, but as citizen heroes. Jacob found himself in his shop again, this time with sunlight pouring through the windows. Clocks ticked in unison, a gentle rhythm instead of a frantic one. He looked at Molly, who was sipping her coffee, feet up on the battered desk. "You ever think we'd actually make it?" she asked, grinning. Jacob shook his head. "Not like this, but I'm glad we tried." She nudged him. "You gonna fix the shop up again?" He looked around at the tangled brass, the faces of clocks, the empty hooks where loss once lived. "Maybe I'll let things tick at their own pace this time." Some flaws, he thought, made you blind. Others let you see what nobody else would. If the weight of false history can break a man, the truth, no matter how sharp or heavy, can stitch him back together. If you've ever carried a secret for those who were silenced, remember, what's hidden in plain sight isn't just evidence of a crime, but a chance for justice, if you're bold enough to take it. And there was still time, even for the broken things, to start again. A week passed, sunlight finally cracking open streaks of gold on West Chandler Street. The rain had washed most of the trash and old betrayals into the storm drains. In their place, there was space, emptied storefronts, scattered scaffolding, a fresh coat of promise layered atop the caving bricks. Jacob arrived early each morning, opening the shop before the city finished stretching itself awake. Molly, never a morning person, still managed to appear with breakfast 2 days out of 3, and her pink hair had faded just a shade, grown out with a streak of silver at the temple. On the Friday after everything, a bell chimed over the shop door, a real, old-school bell which Jacob had finally bothered to fix. The woman who entered was wrapped in a raincoat, a sharp nose peeking from the hood, her hands small but steady on a battered brown envelope. "Is this still Mr. Wren's shop?" she asked, voice papery, wavering as her eyes swept the shelves. Jacob shook his head. "Elias Wren is in the hospital, but he'll be all right. I'm Jacob Merrick. I ran the shop with him lately." She hesitated, then held out the envelope. "He fixed my husband's watch 34 years ago, said if anything ever happened, I was supposed to bring this." Jacob paused, accepting the parcel. Inside was a crisp, faded letter, Elias' handwriting looping in careful blue ink. "To whoever receives this. If you're reading, then the things I hid could not be kept in silence. What matters most is that the past is unburied and those who stole justice did not win. I ask only that you look after what I could not, trust the gentle work, not the gold." There was also a key, small iron, stamped with the initials EW. Molly, who had been tinkering at the back with a clock tower face, poked her head around the partition. "Something more." Jacob turned the key in his hand. "Looks like a goodbye, or maybe a beginning." The woman smiled, lingering by the display. Her eyes were wet. "He said you'd understand." She didn't buy anything, but she left with easier shoulders, and Jacob placed the envelope in the drawer beside his own battered ledger. Business picked up, oddly, impossibly. Shoppers started trickling in. With the case in every morning headline, people remembered Elias as the kindly man who fixed winders for pennies and never once sneered at a cheap Timex. They remembered Jacob's quiet stubbornness, the way he'd always offered a battered umbrella or a cup of tea. And now word spread, Kensington Realty was out. The block's rent control order was reinstated by the city, no more predatory evictions, at least not for a while. Even the old men from Bruno's grocery left tomatoes on the stoop as a thank you. That afternoon, the bell rang again. This time it was Clara Mitchell, flashbulb tucked under her arm, her notebook poised. She offered a tight smile. "Jacob, Molly, mind if I come in?" She didn't wait for an answer. Everyone thinks it was all neat, but how'd you really know what to do? The city could use a how-to guide. Jacob chuckled, shaking his head. "Just a little luck, some stubbornness. Elias pushed us all the way to the truth, we just listened." Clara's eyebrows shot up. "You don't want credit." Molly piped up, tone light. "Credit's a risky thing in this town, we'll take peace, thanks." But Clara wouldn't be put off. "The museum's holding a ceremony next Friday. The FBI wants you there, big photo op. You should be proud, the neighborhood's coming back to watch." Jacob looked to Molly, who raised her chin in that way she did when she felt brave. "We'll be there," he said. Clara grinned, satisfied, and scribbled a quote into her book before leaving with a click of her camera. That evening, Jacob sat alone behind the counter, the sun slashing orange through half-washed glass. He opened the envelope again, fingers tracing the loops of Elias' writing, behind it a key he had not yet tried. Molly was out meeting a friend, her first free night in weeks. The shop felt quieter, not empty, not anymore. He rose, limped to the back storeroom, and ran his hand along the old iron safe. 1, 2, 3, then found another seam. A slot he'd never noticed before, nearly seamless against the painted wall. He slid the key inside, it turned with a stubborn click and a drawer popped open. Inside, several faded photographs, a yellowed ledger with strange Dutch words, and tucked into an old velvet pouch, a single gold pocket watch, far less elaborate than Elias' battered one, but shining nonetheless. On the back, 2 letters, VV. Van der Veen. Jacob sat back on his heels, breath gone. Here it was, the other half of the story. The proof Elias had said only he held, a direct link. If the diamond proved the theft, this proved the victim, the family who'd lost everything and was never given justice. A small slip of paper rested under the velvet. "Give this to them, don't let the name be forgotten." Jacob sat in the quiet for a long moment, feeling the gravity of the story. He knew what to do. The next morning, he dialed the museum, requesting to speak with the Dutch art division. He spoke carefully, softly, explaining what he'd found and requesting that the Van der Veen family, assuming they could be reached, receive the watch, their name restored alongside the rose. The curator promised to do everything possible. Jacob hung up, a weight eased from his chest. Friday arrived in full bloom, sunlight finally steady. The Museum of Fine Arts was a world away from West Chandler, its marble stairs and banners promising something permanent. Jacob wore his cleanest shirt, pressed and stiff, the flaw in his gait disguised by newfound confidence. Molly wore a battered blazer with a sunflower pinned to the lapel. Elias, thinner still but upright, leaned on his daughter as he entered. When he saw Jacob and Molly, his smile, missing teeth and all, was radiant. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said, voice soft. Molly grinned, straightening his tie. "You did more than see it, old man." A crowd gathered, a crush of press, community leaders, even city officials, who now wanted to pose beside the ordinary people whose courage had broken the city's oldest shadow. At the center, the Rose of Amsterdam gleamed under glass, pink hearts sparking in afternoon light for the first time in 70 years. The museum director spoke, her words formal, the story stripped to its essentials: loss, theft, recovery, justice. When she called the names of Elias, Jacob, and Molly, the applause rose, first polite, then honest. Elias accepted the commendation with trembling fingers. Jacob and Molly stood at his side. A small, elegantly dressed Dutch woman was introduced. Mrs. Van der Veen, granddaughter of the original owners, the director explained, voice gentle. Jacob stepped forward, gold watch extended. This was yours, hidden nearly as long as the diamond. It's time it found its way home. The woman's eyes filled. She clasped his hand with both of hers. Thank you, you gave us back our family's name. Later, as applause faded and the crowd splintered into handshakes and photographs, Molly linked arms with Jacob as they wandered through the echoing halls. You believe in clean breaks now, she teased. I believe in second chances, he replied with a crooked smile. She grinned, not bad, Jace. Hero fixer soft touch. He snorted, maybe. Now let's get back to the shop. The clocks will be off by noon again. Back on West Chandler Street, life resumed. The shop's neon ticked on, warm pink against the blue dusk. A hint of laughter and music drifted from somewhere further down, old neighbors celebrating new protections, strangers buying rounds for the truth-tellers who had made headlines. Molly refilled the candy jar. Jacob oiled the last of the chiming clocks. A city block that had teetered on oblivion now felt claimed, not by power, but by the stubborn ones, the ones who kept old gears ticking when the big machines said there was no point. Elias visited on Sundays, his cane rapping out a rhythm as Molly brewed coffee. Clara joined for lunches now, always sniffing for the next strange glint of history or hope. One night after the world had gone quieter, Jacob lingered in front of the shop. He stared at the scuffed green felt square, now famous, beneath the lamplight. On that felt, truths had been revealed, histories returned, and the battered heartbeat of the city had, for one impossible moment, found its own time. Molly perched beside him on the stoop, unlacing her boots. So what's next? She asked, looking sideways. Jacob considered. The clocks, the stories, the second chances blooming like stubborn crocuses after a hard winter. He shrugged. We keep going, that's what we do. The city hummed around them, alive as ever, and in the hush before the hour struck, 100 clocks whispered the truth. Broken things can be mended, so long as someone is brave enough to try. A soft breeze played through the open door, carrying with it street chatter and the scent of rain-dampened brick. Molly jostled Jacob's arm. You know, she said, most adventure stories end with the loot or the hero walking into the sunset. Ours ends at a workbench, putting the same gears back in line. He grinned, reaching for a watch with a bent spring, the kind of repair that took patience more than brilliance. That's all the adventure I want now. Molly held up her mug in a half-toast. To old streets, older secrets, and people who can't help but meddle. Jacob clinked his coffee to hers. To putting things right, even if they never tick quite the same again. Heavy steps sounded outside. The bell jangled and Elias entered, leaning on his cane and grinning like a schoolboy. Heard the neighborhood safe again for hopeless romantics and repairmen. How's business? Jacob met his gaze, warmth flooding through him. Steady, lot of folks needing things fixed or forgiven. Elias nodded, then pressed something small into Jacob's hand, a battered house key. For you, I'm moving in with my daughter, can't handle stairs. Figure the shop could use a new apartment tenant, always was too quiet above at night. Jacob opened his mouth, surprise feathering his voice. You'd trust me with it. Who else? Elias' eyes sparkled. You watched over more than clocks, son. Let the place watch over you now. Molly gave a grateful laugh, nudging Jacob's shoulder. See, told you it's not all lost things and heartbreak in this city. For a moment they stood in easy silence. Elias by the counter, Molly spinning a gear between her fingers, Jacob weighing the key's cool heft in his palm. The rain outside faded to a whisper, traffic lights clicking through their cycle, nothing urgent for the first time in weeks. Jacob exhaled, slow and sure. Looks like we've got some lives to put back together, let's take our time. And so they did, one gear, one promise, one bright second chance at a time, while outside, the city's clocks kept on ticking.